Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to another podcast. I might be welcoming you from Apple Podcast, Spotify Podcast, or whichever other audio platform you find this on. But for the YouTube video, I'll give you a little wave. Younes, who is the guest on the 3 More Points podcast today, I'm sure he's going to be giving you a wave right now on the screen. Younes, we have decided to film a pod on possibly one of the most controversially talkative Chelsea Football Club days in history. And we seem to have said that a lot in recent times. But first things first, it would be impolite of me to not ask you at least how the bloody hell are you?
Thank you for having me on, man. I'm good. Considering Chelsea aside, I'm good. Everything's nice with me. But yeah, talk about chance. You know, here we are on Chelsea's 117th birthday, and it's a mess. And I mean, the content doesn't stop, but my goodness, we wish it would be more positive than this, because this is the worst that we could have asked for.
I mean, at the time that you're listening to this, it's probably going to be after the game against Norwich, which is almost 6.5 hours from now. But if you go on Twitter, the majority of people that I follow on Twitter are usually Chelsea people, or it's like people from YouTube in the past, or football people, journalists, whatever. And even the people that don't normally tweet about Chelsea are piping up and getting involved now, because this has gone from being like, what if, what could happen, like there is potential of this, to the government have now sanctioned Roman Abramovich. They have, to quote, he is a pro-Kremlin oligarch who deserves to have a punishment as a result of his involvement with everything involved with Russia, and in accordance to obviously now the war on Ukraine, or towards Ukraine. Chelsea Football Club, as one of Roman Abramovich's assets, has been seized. What does this mean? Well, it means a bundle of things, and within the podcast today we're going to talk about how the sanctions affect Chelsea FC, how the sanctions affect fans, because I think right now, especially when you look through Twitter, the backlash is very much about how do we feel as Chelsea fans, and then we're also going to talk about what does it mean for Thomas Tuchel, because as Jan has said on his videos, I'm sure you've said the same, I've said the same, if there is anyone Chelsea related that I feel sorry for as much as anybody else, as much as my own selfish reasons, Thomas Tuchel has had so much to deal with during his time at Chelsea, and to have won what he's won and done what he's done, yet still have all of this to deal with, is absolutely insane. But first things first, Younes, have you seen the restrictions that Chelsea are going to now have when it comes to their budgeting for the actual team with transport, to start at like the smallest little thing? Have you seen what is going to be happening there?
It's chaos. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if you've managed to see this as well, but Chelsea have like a cap pretty much now in terms of travel. Can only spend in and around £20,000, I think, per fixture in terms of actually travelling. So you look at our game at Lille, for example, and you think, what's going to happen there? Because there's a lot of costs and a lot of money that goes into that sort of thing that a lot of fans undermine or don't even know about. It could get to a point where we just can't do it. We might not be able to. So immediately off the cuff, the club hasn't got any money coming in. There's no money coming in. Everything's been cut off. Whether that's tickets, what happens on a match day, all sorts of revenue, merchandise, everything has stopped. So it's just paying out expenses, making sure everyone's paid, and nothing's coming in. So in terms of travel, let alone, it's going to be really, really difficult. Really difficult. Now, I don't know if Chelsea normally cover all of that in advance. And if they do, then great. But if they haven't, then this could get sticky. Very sticky.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, like you said there, I hadn't actually even thought about the idea that maybe there's like a pro rata basis for the payments that they do in advance for, let's say, 3 months of the season, but then you also you have that ambiguity where you've got like FA Cup trips to Middlesbrough, where you've got the contemplation of like, do we take a 7-hour coach up to Middlesbrough, or do we fly on a privately chartered jet? And all of these things, and we start on the micro level, because a lot of people at the moment, myself included, I think, oh God, it's basically like having another transfer ban again, you know? Let alone the fact that Chelsea fans can't attend Chelsea matches, which we will go on to. But stuff like the Middlesbrough away, if we beat Lille, which let's just say, goodness forbid, we should do that, then what if we go and get a Real Madrid? Like, what do we do here? And these little tiny things are going to be the make or breaks as to whether or not we're actually dealing here with an immediate issue where the government may choose to be lenient in favour of saving the club, but then we're also still relying on Abramovich to be willing to not make any money from this. Because there was a lot of ambiguity about the words that were said from Abramovich regarding what the money of the revenue regarding the sale of Chelsea Football Club, what he would do with it. And I got criticised because I bring this up again, and I was talking about it on Twitter today, where Abramovich said that victims of the war in Ukraine will be receiving fund as a result of me selling Chelsea Football Club. What were your thoughts on this? Because a lot of people are very, very sceptical to the point where they just absolutely disregard any potential that this might actually end up going to Ukrainians. I know that we've obviously had conversations off camera and off air talking about the politics and the feeling and emotion behind the situation. But I think regarding what the government have done, from the way you understand it at this moment in time, do you think that all of these sanctions are being in place and then eventually we might not even ever see Abramovich's sale revenue actually go to help the victims of the war and it just sits with the government? Where do you actually think the sale of Chelsea Football Club, with what we currently understand, where do you think that money's going to go?
This is the problem now, because at least when it was Roman putting the club up for sale and putting out that statement, it was a case of he's made it clear. Now, whether he carries that forward or not, well, at least we know who's accountable, and it's him. Now it's in the hands of the government. I mean, it's not even a case of giving the club, let alone the money that's coming in and where that's going, but giving the club to someone who we know is going to be taking it forward, or it's going to be in the right hands because they've been selected. This is now in the hands of the government. The government don't care about that. The government are going to find what's in their interests for themselves. And that's what makes me worried, because with the government, you can't really, apparently Chelsea are in the hands of the Treasury. You can't pinpoint one specific person who's going to be responsible for all of this. It's the UK government as an entity. So that makes it a little bit easier on their part to just be able to do what they have to do behind the scenes that we might not even hear about. So yeah, it makes me worried in that aspect, in terms of money that's going to be made from this sale. How much is going to be made from this sale? If we go into administration, what's the process there? There's so many questions. And after that, in terms of the money that's taken from whatever sale may happen, well, yeah, where is it going to go to? Because my gut instinct tells me it's going to go right into the, rightfully so, the Treasury, or whoever is going to be managing it in terms of the government, and it might just get split in between themselves. Or, it will go off to one of their so-called foundations, and then it will be moved about and done, they'll do whatever the hell they want with it. It's so hard to pinpoint at that point. This is the fear, not only where the money's going, but also the future of the club. The government can just give it to, I don't know, the highest bidder or whoever they choose. Even if they want a hand in terms of Chelsea Football Club, we can't control that anymore. It's completely in their hands. So that makes me worried in terms of the future and who's going to be in charge of Chelsea, because it's not going to be selected like it was meant to.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been very aware, for those people that have been able to kind of differentiate the Abramovich, who is the, pro-Kremlin oligarch, and then the successful owner of Chelsea Football Club. For those of us that have managed to establish that those two things can coexist together, we have been absolutely blessed as Chelsea fans. For you and I personally, I think that none of us can turn our nose up at what we've experienced as Chelsea fans in the past 19 years. But when the first initial even threat, I guess you could say, from the government came in, that, we're going to be trying to seize the assets of not just Roman Abramovich, but many of the other wealthy Russians who have a lot of UK assets available to them. I was concerned because whether or not people have questioned whether Roman's is the right man to keep going with Chelsea for a while. Some have, but I've always been of the ilk that he is a fantastic owner of the club. The issue at first, when it comes to, it's up for sale, is you just wonder what Roman's going to say and who he's going to sell it to. Then you get the progression, and it's kind of like easing the blow a little bit, where we hear that Roman Abramovich is going to wipe out the loan. We're all thinking, this is rosy. This is wonderful. Like, it's not ideal. It's not what we want, but it's kind of what needs to happen. And it's looking like it's getting a little bit better. You've then got all of the other comments from every other billionaire who seemingly in the world has had an interest in a say and saying, I'd like to buy a Chelsea Football Club. And it's kind of back in that steamrolling of debate where we don't know who it's going to be. Roman doesn't know who it's going to be. Is he going to rush it? He then comes out and says no. He wants to make sure that the next owner of Chelsea Football Club is a football person who has got the success of the club at the forefront of his mind the same way that he has in his 19 years as an owner. Now, like you say, it is all of those like micro progressions that we've been able to experience and kind of get an understanding of have just been thrown absolutely out the window today. And my biggest concern now, like you said, is who is it going to be? It's not going to be anymore a case of like Roman Abramovich can bide his time and actually really pick the best businessman or woman for the future of Chelsea Football Club. This really could now start to get messy. And we talk about the smallest little things like travel costs. You can't even go into the megastore. The megastore is now closed at Stamford Bridge. Yep. It's just ridiculous. There are so many things here. Inevitably, at this moment in time, we don't even fathom the magnitude of what's going to happen. But in terms of, do you have like any, I guess it's not even a prediction, do you have any preference as to the kind of person, or if not a name, that you would want to actually take over of Chelsea, including ones that we've probably heard of so far that people would know the name of now?
I mean, we've heard the names. We've heard, whether it's up to 10 or 11 or 12 parties that are all interested and all of that. I mean, it's difficult now because that was when the sale of Chelsea under Roman was a possibility. And it was a case of really, vetting each one of them to see who would be best fit. I don't think the government won't do that. The government just won't do that at all. Their own aim is just going to be to make sure that whether Chelsea go into admin or not is to eventually cut it all off from Roman, make sure he doesn't get a penny, and then Chelsea Football Club can deal with themselves. Just give it to someone and that's it. I think that's where they're going to take it. Personally, when it was a case of Roman having to sell, I was in the group of, I don't really prefer an American sports owner to come in and take it based on the examples we've already seen in some of the Premier League clubs, whether it's Arsenal. You have the Glazers are the Glazers, but Arsenal, the Kroenkes, FSG at Liverpool, who have only just recently started to really get their act together because of pressure from the fans. I don't want us to even begin to entertain that risk. Although, that's not to write all of them off. There might be a good one. Who knows? Apart from that, though, the Swiss consortium was always a little bit of a weird one because of the fact that the Swiss the Swiss guy's 86, and that's very old. Even though he's just investing. In terms of the Turkish guy, Bayrak, whether he was going to be an option or not, he confirmed it. Apparently, I did like that because apparently he could afford the whole thing very comfortably. He has a construction, he's made more of his money from construction, so in terms of a stadium, we would be okay, I think, with that. Apparently he was close with Roman to an extent. And he's Turkish. You know the way that Turkish people love football, it's almost like a religion over there, so that's encouraging. In terms of some of the other ones, though, I've only just today heard about an English businessman who is a Chelsea supporter. Apparently he's been attending since he was 4, and his dad had the chance to play for Chelsea at one point. He was interested, but now all of that is on the shelf because the club's been seized, or the club's been frozen at least. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one as to how it's all going to move forward now. I don't think it's going to be the same direction we thought in terms of all those options that are interested. I think they're all still interested, but the way they acquire the club is going to be completely different now. And it could be a lot cheaper than they thought. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think the thing that interests me as well is how in the statement that's come out from the UK government, I can't remember the names of all the people, and to be honest, I don't even want to start reeling off names of politicians because they all do my head in, to be honest. But what they've said is that it's going to remain under review. So I think what I at least gather from that and what I understand from that is that when they keep it under review, it means that the sanctions will remain in place on Roman Abramovich, which obviously means it must impact Chelsea because that is his biggest asset in the UK. But from everything I've heard, it does seem as though there is an immediate understanding here from those making these decisions that they realise that there is a massive economic backlash as a result of doing this. Yep. Obviously, they have to go ahead for the plan that they have as a government to be seen to be doing something about Abramovich. But they understand that football is the cornerstone of community. Football is, and especially Chelsea Football Club, an entity that employs a very large sum of people, let alone the tax money that eventually will probably end up going and has been going for many years. So it's, for me, I'm positive in the sense of it's a disaster because we are left with no control. But at least from the early stages, there seems to be a bit less ambiguity from the government in the sense of, right, we could literally be sat here right now having this discussion while meanwhile somewhere in the House of Commons or somewhere in the UK over a nice glass of red wine, they're saying, right, we could actually run this into the ground. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think there is going to be an element of they understand that seizing Chelsea Football Club as one of the biggest football clubs in the world also has like a societal backlash, as well as like being seen to be doing the right thing as regards to the war and the approach to punish Russian oligarchs. That is, in my opinion, I've always said it's probably the right thing to do. Whether I like what that does to me as a Chelsea fan and Chelsea Football Club or not, there is definitely a human level of this where I can't really backtrack on any of those things I've said. But at least with the government keeping it under review, does leave me positive that maybe, despite all of us fans right now feeling distraught, feeling confused, feeling like we have no idea where the club are going to go, I think after what we saw with the European Super League, with the decisions that Roman and Chelsea made and the way that Chelsea fans stood up and really made a massive difference in a footballing decision-making sense to actually end the Super League, they've got to tread with caution for sure. But moving away from, let's not talk about government so much for now, I think for me the biggest concern here is how even this evening I've had friends message me being like, mate, I really don't know what to do because, like, you know, Chelsea Football Club is, for me, what motivates me. It keeps me going to work. I look forward to going to games at the weekend, and now, unless you've got a season ticket or unless you've already purchased a ticket that you've received, fans can no longer go to watch Chelsea, which to me, this has got to be one of the first things, even if the government starts selling the allocation and they keep the money. In my opinion, even at this moment in time where I don't want to see any money go straight directly to the UK government, whether it could go to Abramovich or not, I don't want to be seeing that. But surely for the sake of keeping the heart and soul of what makes Chelsea Football Club what it is, surely the first thing that needs to be done with this reviewing process is actually allowing fans to go to the game. Is it even possible?
I mean, at the moment, what I've read is because the club is an asset of Roman Abramovich, it's going to be a case of him having to officially relinquish Chelsea from himself, basically, without a penny coming to him. If he does that officially, and I think that process is obviously going to run until May. So he has, I think, up until then to be able to make that move. And I think once he does, then the club is officially in control by the government. And then at that point, I think there's a special license that can come in order to generate the actual sale of the club. So it's a process that needs to be done. But right now, apparently, the government have put it in Roman's hands. Because right now, as it stands, if he doesn't take any action on it, and if he doesn't relinquish, everything stays as it is, which would mean, as you've just mentioned, the megastore's closed. Fans can't attend games. Or, well, unless you're a season ticket holder. No new ticket purchases for home games and no away tickets allocated to any Chelsea fans for future fixtures for the rest of the season, except for tonight because they've already been allocated. Yeah, all sorts just cut off. So I guess we have to wait and see what Roman does first before anything. But right now, the way that it is, I think it's as you've mentioned, it's it'd be better if the government could at least keep things functioning as it were, and if it means having to go into their direction, then I mean, fair enough, just to keep the club functioning. When you're looking at the megastore or Frankie's Bar, which is allocated next to the megastore, that's shut. So who's going to be paying their wages and the staff that are all working there? Or, you know, in terms of moving forward, is it going to be the government that's paying the stewards? Is it going to be the government that's getting money into the club to pay the players? Is it going to, like, what's going to happen? You know, and how long it is going to be dragged out for? That's the worry, because we're already hearing that sponsors are reviewing their positions and they're all looking like they're going to duck out. Whether that's Free, Zap, Hublot, Hyundai, they could all be gone. Free and Zap have already reviewed their positions, and that could be a decision that's made soon. So, without sponsors, with no money coming in, being in limbo, without the club actually officially in the government's hands, because Roman needs to make that decision first and just relinquish the control, nothing happens. So it could be ugly. It could be ugly. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. But I agree with you. I would love if, at least in the process, up until we get a new owner or a sell happens or a sell is allowed to happen, because right now a sell cannot happen. We'll just have to wait and see if Roman gives up.
Yeah. No, I think at least the good thing with it happening now, I'm trying to like just think of a way to kind of bring a positive spin to the progress of how this is going to work. But considering we've had like 10 days, 2 weeks of this kind of like, I keep saying it's a cloud over Chelsea Football Club. Having that time has at least allowed Roman Abramovich to have conversations already with potential buyers. So even from the very minimal understanding I have just from reading social media, because that's pretty much the news these days, Roman could surely take one of these potential bids from a potential buyer to a minister in the UK and end up saying like, okay, this is who wants to buy Chelsea. Yes, the money is frozen because of the sanctions that you have put onto me, but surely, if we're still talking about the sale of Chelsea going to a charity, which Roman has already said he was more than happy to donate proceedings to victims of the war of Ukraine, we can argue about what that actually would be all day long, but that's kind of pointless, and we're not going to be sat here talking about that between the two of us. But surely, that would actually be something that kind of makes all of this stress and all of this drama and chaos. Surely that's got to be the best angle that both Roman Abramovich and Chelsea as like a functioning entity, that's got to be the goal at this point, right? Surely, even though they've sanctioned Abramovich, there has to be some kind of cooperation between Abramovich, who has to either relinquish and just let it go, or all of these talks that have happened in the past 10 days, 2 weeks, people can work together on kind of like a totally different law? Is it? Like a totally... I don't understand how that works. It's like, I don't understand if the government now that they've actually sanctioned him can allow him to have any say. Surely it means they can't.
Exactly, and that's my concern, and that's the thing. You know, you made a good point in terms of having that process. If they were willing to listen to him, in terms of at least give it to this guy or that guy, and you know, if you were a flipping minister, we'd probably be in better hands. But right now, in terms of the way that it is, I don't think they'll do that. I think they're just going to cut him off completely and go, look, you're done. You're finished. Like, you don't have any say in this anymore. This is all in our control. And in terms of the sale, he already said that if Chelsea was sold, then it would go to a charitable foundation that he set up in order to give to Ukraine and whatnot. Now, apparently, it could just go to a government charity that they've set up. And again, it goes back to that point. Where does all that go? No one really knows. So in terms of getting the new owners in and negotiating, I honestly think, and I'm being realistic, everything that's been done up until this point will be put to the bin. Because in terms of being able to get a sell through for a certain amount of money, remember, he's already rejected a couple of bids for around 2.5 billion, I think one for 2 or maybe a little less. Now with the government in control, they might just accept something like that. you know, if it gets to it and Roman relinquishes, and that's what I think everyone's going to have to wait for now. So I think in terms of getting it out to an owner that we want to get it out to, or Roman wants to get it out to, I don't think the government are really going to listen. They might observe, they might look at it and see what's been done up until this point, and then analyze it and study it and see how they take it forward. But I don't think Roman has a say going forward at all. I think his time's done. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it all happens in the next 24, 48 hours. You know, what pops up, at least for the next week or so. But going forward, I don't think Chelsea are going to have it in their minds on who to give the club to, in the same way that we do, or in the same way we knew Roman did, to give it to someone who's really going to take that club forward. I think the government will just want to get their piece of the pie and just move it on ASAP. So
yeah, that's the sad reality of the situation here. And it's kind of like, the more we talk about it, because obviously we're only recording this about 2 hours after the news even dropped, maybe 3 hours after the news dropped.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, especially for me being out in Bali, like my first reaction is like go and like protest about it. But then actually, like, the hardest thing to accept in this whole thing is that no matter what we might feel about Chelsea being seized, and we're concerned that we can't make transfers, we're going to lose players on big contracts, like, this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for an, in my opinion, inexcusable war. So it makes it so difficult. And we had chats on the phone the other night, Younes, the two of us, between us, saying, like, it's so difficult in these situations to really paint the entire picture. And there's always going to be somebody who is trying to catch you out and get you saying something you don't actually want to say. And my biggest problem right now is, you know, even though I agree with why this is happening to an extent, the fact that as fans, we are absolutely powerless to the direction our club goes is just so flipping difficult to accept.
yeah.
And I think the one saving grace of all of this is that in terms of the playing personnel, thank goodness that we are a Champions League winning, Super Cup winning, Club World Cup winning squad team right now with Thomas Tuchel as the manager. We got to talk about Thomas Tuchel here, because if ever there was the perfect person to represent Chelsea at this moment in time, it's got to be Thomas Tuchel. We've seen him kind of bite a little bit towards the media recently, because the media have obviously been pressuring him and goading him with certain questions to try and spark certain answers about Chelsea's involvement with everything, but he's trying to keep everything focused on the pitch. Do you think there is any way that Thomas Tuchel looks at the ambiguity and the uncertainty of the situation right now and tries to jump ship? Do you think that's possible?
I don't think he'll jump ship. I think Thomas Tuchel is smart enough, I think, to understand the situation and to see that, you know, and be professional enough in order to carry out what he's got to carry out. I feel for him a lot, though, because he's had issue after issue after issue thrown in his face time and time and time again throughout his time at Chelsea so far. And he's only been at Chelsea for just over a year. So that's one hell of a year, I have to say. I got a feel for him, because now we've seen his reaction in the press conferences with journalists coming at him with all sorts of questions and questions and questions, to the point where he exploded and just went, "I'm not a politician. Stop. I'm a coach. That's it. You know, I'm not the spokesman of Roman." So I think, obviously, we're recording this prior to the Norwich game. We'll see what happens, I guess, after the Norwich game, because apparently there's only going to be one press conference, which is going to be post-Norwich and pre-Newcastle at the same time. So I think he's going to get bombarded. And if I'm going to give some sort of advice, if the journalists come out like bloodhounds, wanting, you know, details, I think he just needs to follow in what Jose done once. You remember when, after, forgot what game it was, no, if it was after Liverpool, it was after one game that I think we didn't get a good result, and they asked him questions, and he just went, "I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say." And then gets asked another question. "I have nothing to say." Ask another question. Nothing. If he just does that, I think that's the only way he doesn't actually give anything away. But obviously, Thomas Tuchel, I have full faith, and you're right, in terms of moving the team forward in a crisis like this. Let's have it right. It's a crisis now. he's a perfect guy. He's the perfect guy to be able to understand that he has to use what he's got in front of him. He's smart enough in order to try and move that forward. We've seen what he's done with the team compared to when he first came in, and the issues under Lampard and what we've been able to achieve at that point. He's steered us in such a good direction. I think we're only spending money on one player, which was Lukaku. So we couldn't be in better hands. We really couldn't be. However, I feel for him because the next 24 hours or so is going to be, I think, very, very difficult for him to deal with. And I wish him the best of luck, but I wouldn't have anyone else than Thomas Tuchel.
I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of there'll be a point where he has to literally just be like when you're a kid, you get arrested. Not that this happened to me. You get arrested, you go to jail, and it's like, don't speak until the lawyers arrive. No comment.
That's it.
No comment. Remember the Bill, the TV show? Quality. You can just see it now. And to be honest, I empathise massively with Tuchel because I don't think I've ever seen a manager, at least a Chelsea manager. We've had some fabulous managers when it comes to actually how they address interviews. Mourinho, Conte, Sarri, the three that first come to mind. But to actually meticulously deliver such flawless interviews in the terms of like body language and the actual words that he chooses at the certain times he chooses, I don't think there's ever been a manager as endearing as Thomas Tuchel to the Chelsea fans, as an empathetic person in this situation for him. Yes, of course, he's concerned about, he's on a big contract and he's a football manager at the top of the game. So therefore, he can't just be staying around at Chelsea forever, not knowing who the owner's going to be one day or whether Boris Johnson's going to come knocking through the door asking for him to make a Bovril for him the next day. You don't know what it's going to be. So I think for Tuchel now, like you say, the next 24 hours, the result against Norwich, and obviously you guys are listening to this after the game, but if it's a bad one, I just feel as though there could be like cataclysmic impacts on the squad, on him as a manager, on how we actually focus on doing stuff on the field, because everything's against us. We're not going to have fans at away games. We're not going to have fans in European away games. Everything is going to point in a direction against Chelsea, which as much as I've got a personal dislike for that, which makes me dislike what's happening to us, I also think that it's A, unavoidable at this point and we've just got to deal with the situation, but B, we've also got to look at making sure that at least that one ship that we still do have, which is the 11 players that go out on the field, the staff around them, the substitutes and all of the playing personnel together, we have got to absolutely put this into bubble wrap 10 times over and then 4 boxes inside boxes. It's like pass the parcel, but it never ends. That is how we got to protect the team right now, because eventually we talk about money being frozen now, but if results don't go the way that we would like them to, which sees us, heaven forbid, drop out the top 4, not get Champions League football next season, with all of these questions about who's going to own the club. Does Roman relinquish it? Does it remain with the UK government? And I just have this sneak feeling in my head that A, we can't sign new players with new contracts, which means that A, we got 3 flipping defenders who are now destined pretty much to leave the club in the summer. 3 top defenders. Yep. I just fear for how, if this really does affect the players on the field, which they're very young, a lot of them, they've got fantastic winning mentalities, of course, as European champions, world champions. But if this does have a negative impact, I just fear that, like you say, with the sponsorships, 3 reviewing their 40 million a season partnership, all of these things could end up just burying Chelsea into a hole that would take either A, so long to reverse, or B, irreversible. And it's not an exaggeration, and I think that some people will be like, oh yeah, you're thinking too much about it, it's not going to be that bad. But we also didn't think 3 weeks ago that there was going to be Russia invading Ukraine and the potential of World War III. So as a Chelsea fan, keeping it about the football, again, which is what I always try and do, it's scary, actually. It makes me a bit scared. And I don't know if that's just me being selfish because we're so used to winning. But it's also, you have to kind of paint these pictures for yourself to get a better understanding of the situation.
You have to. You can't bury your head in the sand and just hope for one way to happen. That's not how life works. So you have to analyze all potential scenarios. And this is unfortunately one of the potential scenarios. Yeah, things may actually end up sorting itself out. It's a possibility. But things could go it could be a catastrophe. It could go really, really wrong. It could. The thing is with all of this, especially the money side, it's clear that now on the pitch, Thomas Tuchel needs to unify the players like he's never unified them before. There needs to be a huge sense of unity in that dressing room, because going forward into the summer, this could have huge ramifications. When you're saying about 3 players that could be on the way out, one of them we kind of knew was already going to happen. Christensen was going to happen anyway, I think. He was already on his way out to Barcelona. Aspie hadn't even made his mind up yet. Well, I think that might be forced at this point. And Rudiger, who was about to stay, well, that might not happen now. He might be forced to leave as well. And we can't get anyone in. This is like a transfer ban, but on steroids, basically. Because at least with a transfer ban, you still have other directions to go in. You still have resources that you can dip into. You still have money coming in from all sorts of avenues. We have been cut off from every single possible source, and we're not allowed to get anyone in, and we're not allowed to renew any other contracts. We're not allowed to do anything. So in terms of going forward from the summer, you're looking at players that could be leaving, players that won't be coming in, without any money coming in either, sponsors backing out and terminating all of their deals with us. How could you possibly survive? We also have to take into factor, if a decision isn't made by, I think it's sometime in May, and the club does go into administration, that means that the rule comes in that we will get a 9-point deduction immediately. So even in terms of playing Champions League football, we need to win games up until end of the season to even give ourselves a chance of building up a gap. That way, if we were to get a deduction, we still remain in the top 4. Because if we then dip out and we're having to find new sponsors, a new owner who's completely uncertain, players that have already left, we haven't got a transfer window because we haven't planned, new owners need to come and familiarise themselves, we're not playing Champions League football, we're having to use what we only have. It could be really, really bad. It could be really bad. But we'll have to wait and see, because there's a chance this could be sorted quickly. There's a chance this could be done in terms of Roman relinquishing, the government getting this moving, a new owner approaches, the club's given over to a new owner, and then we start moving from there and we can start planning. But, the truth is the ramifications could be massive. So it's not good at all. But for Thomas Tuchel now and on the pitch and the boys, they have to unify. They have to just give their everything and just see what happens. And it would be me lying to say that they're not going to be affected. They will be affected. All of us as fans, we're not even on the pitch and we're affected. Them as players who are on the pitch and have the control to get the results through the door, having seen what's happening upstairs, which is going to definitely get all of them thinking. Because if they're playing for a club now where money's not coming in, they might have in the back of their heads, well, what's it going to mean for me? Or when it comes to the end of my contract, then what's going to happen? They might start already in the back of their heads I might have to start thinking of a way out at some point. And that could play in terms of the performances on the pitch as well. So, yeah, there's many, many, many ways that this could go in, and there's many factors to consider. That's just the truth.
Yeah, it's tough for us as well, because obviously we're filming this so raw off the news, and it is all speculation, but I think it's also healthy speculation, because at the end of the day, one way or another, we're still going to be Chelsea fans come the end of this podcast, or come the end of the game against Norwich tonight. So that's 100%. An absolute no-brainer. And I think, again, with fans, like, the most annoying thing for me is how, when I saw Bury go out of business, when I see Derby go potentially out of business too, when all of this happens to football clubs that aren't mine, even if it was Tottenham and they went out of business, I'm not saying Chelsea are going out of business, guys, by the way, but, like, another thing I want to talk to you about, Younes, because we talk about this a lot, is like, what is it with people? And I know that it's all banter until it's not banter, and when you're on the other side of it, sometimes it's hard to accept it. So I could sound very bitter right now. But surely there can't be anybody who could genuinely be happy at the idea of Chelsea Football Club capitulating from the pinnacle of the sport, even if we're just talking from like a romantic side of things, surely, like, I can't get my head around how people can think this way. I really don't. Like, people burning us for supporting Chelsea. Like, I posted a tweet, it was like, the Chelsea. I just put it on, like, copy and paste. And then everyone like, how dare you? Read the room, bruv. I'm like, what do you mean read the bloody room? Did I say here, Roman Abramovich wrote? No. Like, I don't understand. Like, can we all just, like, separate these things for once and use a bit of savvy to understand that, like, yes, okay, Chelsea gets sanctioned. Chelsea are in the mud. It doesn't look good on anybody. Be it the person serving your Bovril in the turnstiles, you as a fan, Roman Abramovich as the owner, Marina Granovskaya, Petr Cech. Nobody at Chelsea Football Club is happy about this situation, but I don't know how people can still be so, like, hung up on having a go at people for still supporting the club. Do you think, especially as people that kind of have voices in the Chelsea community, is there anything that you would say to Chelsea fans right now who are feeling a bit confused, are feeling a bit upset and gutted about this situation? What do you think is the best way that we can collectively, as fans, deal with what is happening right now?
I mean, everything you say is spot on, man. If I had one message, is to remember why you support Chelsea at this point. It is what it is. Regardless of what happens, Chelsea will always remain. Chelsea is bigger than all of us. Let's have it right. We are celebrating the 117th birthday today. Or we're meant to be celebrating, but we're not. And there are bigger things at view here. Even if the worst were to happen, remember, we've gone down before. We got relegated at one point. We came back up. We've gone on, even though years later, but we've gone on to become one of the most successful clubs in the world. All I have to say to the other fans, though, who are enjoying this or don't realise the ramification of it, or don't realise, for the sake of a football club in this country belonging to the Premier League, why it's not a good thing. And even in terms of, you've already mentioned Bury and Derby and other teams that are lower leagues, it's never a good thing when a football club gets hit like this. All I have to say is, it may be Chelsea today, it could be one of your clubs tomorrow. Because 2 weeks ago, everything was looking absolutely rosy. Everything was looking fantastic. Even though there was a statement from Roman, potentially he might sell and whatnot. But we're all of a sudden talking about new buyers, talking about possible Saudi group coming in with 600 billion. We're talking about all sorts. And you're thinking, it's going to be all right. Here we are. All of a sudden, click of a finger, everything has switched. And we are on the brink of having literally no money coming in. And we don't know what's going to happen to the club. So it could be your club tomorrow. It could be. Never say never. And that's where people have to be a little bit wise in terms of mocking the situation. Yeah, there's banter, obviously. You're going to have a little giggle if you're an Arsenal fan or you're a United fan or you're Spurs especially. But there's a level of banter, and then there's taking it too far and literally not having any sympathy as a football club for what's happening, and that is, I think, the line. In terms of us, though, and Chelsea fans, look, I do think there's going to be some Chelsea fans, or as I say, probably so-called Chelsea fans, that are going to look at the situation and go, I'm bouncing, see you later, I'm not going to be part of this. Well, see you later. You know where the door is, don't let it hit you on the way out. The truth is, the ones who are diehard and are loyal will stick no matter what. And I think this scenario is going to test a lot of people's loyalty, whilst they're tempted at jumping ship to another club who they might find success at. But those who truly love the club will love the club if we ended up becoming a Sunday League team playing against SE Dons, right? Or #United. We'd still be here. And that's the most important thing. Because, Chelsea, regardless of what happens, Chelsea are Chelsea. And as long as that remains, we're still here.
I absolutely agree. Chelsea are Chelsea for real. And I think for me as well, as a fan who, we're more involved, I guess you could say, because not only do we take on board what fans are saying, but we also make content about Chelsea. So I think, at least moving forward for me, I'm sure you'll be the same. We want to cover all of the information about the sanctions, about how it impacts Chelsea, about how we feel as fans, about how it's impacting results on the pitch. We're going to keep doing that, of course. But I think, at least in the meantime, there is going to be even more uncertainty than what we thought a week ago, what we thought 24, 48 hours ago, when we were just looking at, which billionaire is it going to be? Now it's ever so slightly more complicated than that. But as Younes said very well, Chelsea Football Club is still here. It's still the same players. We've got to back the boys. We've got to make sure we try and finish the season as best as we possibly can and deal, like we said at the beginning of the pod, deal with the micro issues of like, can we actually travel to Madrid if we beat Lille? Do we have to drive a bus to Middlesbrough, or are we going to take a jet today? All of these little things, everything is going to impact Chelsea right now. There is no denying the magnitude of what is happening. And I guess throughout this conversation today, we've kind of like, I think I've been slightly more pessimistic, I think, than you probably, because I listen to what you're saying and I'm like, how is this bloody happening? But in terms of expectations, it's such a big thing now where a few months ago we're talking about Premier League title races. We're talking Ben Chilwell, Reece James tearing up the thing. And then all of a sudden they're injured, we're out of a title race, we're a bit distraught about it, but then we kind of just get on with things. Now, what can the expectations be, or is it far too soon to know? But for me at least, like, game by game, every time we win now, I'm going to be celebrating like we did after the Champions League final, because I don't want to take it for granted, even if I'm just sitting here watching on TV and then buzzing when I make a video on 6 things we learned straight after the game. But it's going to be tough now with all of this stuff going on, and you see City and Liverpool just getting better and better. Surely, also Tuchel's looking at this thinking, there's a gap there already, but it's not going to get smaller, is it, as a result of this? Surely now everything has to be tapered back, which, to end on a positive, has got to be a benefit if Tuchel wants to stay, because whoever comes in is going to have to understand that the club needs stabilisation. So going and firing a Champions League winning manager is delusional. So to end it on a positive, I guess the one thing I think looking forward that we could actually enjoy is Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea, if he wants to stay.
Absolutely. And that's going to be the one saving grace from this whole scenario. I mean, the first thing in terms of expectation, or, prediction in terms of going to the end of the season, is we just have to try and push as we can in the FA Cup, the Champions League. But then again, you even look at that in terms of the Champions League, as you've mentioned, going to Madrid, for example. I mean, let alone that, going to Lille. We've still got to travel to Lille. And I don't know if all that's been paid or not. But if it hasn't, we might need to try and find an easy hotel, or, I don't know, some sort of 20 euro budget hotel a night. I don't know. Because everything needs to be managed. Now it's in terms of there's a cap, there's a limit. You can't go above about 20 grand for travel. And that's the whole package in terms of actually locating to somewhere to play and come back. So it's tough. Everything needs to be managed and reserved, and we don't even know the ins and outs in terms of travelling. And if we have to play a quarter-final and then play a semi-final and then even play a final, that's going to cost each time, and we don't have any money coming in. So it's crazy. Even in terms of reserves that we have available to us, all that's part of the club. That would have been frozen. So dipping into anything right now is a difficulty. The only thing that's being allowed is to pay the staff and to allow catering, and that's pretty much it. So things have to be managed really well, and that's why it's difficult to come up with a prediction or come up with an expectation. I'd love for us to go and win the Champions League and the FA Cup. I'd love for that to happen. But if we're being real, there's a chance we might even not be able to travel to a fixture, in Europe, and that would mean a forfeit. It's a possibility at this point. I don't think it would happen in terms of the FA Cup, because the FA Cup, as you've already mentioned, you don't need to stay anywhere. You can literally travel on the day, take a train up or take a coach, even if it's one of those, £5 budget coaches at this point. You just travel up. I can't even believe we're having this conversation. But
mate, you know what? I'm more than happy to put myself forward. If you want to sit on the back seat, we could maybe take a couple of the boys up in a car. We could probably stop off at Starbucks on the way, try and get a couple of the buy one, get one free deals, see if Greg's has got a special on in the morning. More than happy to fly back from Bali, by the way, to donate my car, with Younes in the back seat, keeping everyone's legs warm, let's say. To end on a dreadful joke from me, really. There's not really time for banter right now. But Younes, thank you very much for coming on, mate. I know at the moment it's very much speculation, but we've managed to talk for 50 minutes about the current state of affairs at Chelsea, and I'm sure there are some people at home who have been very grateful to hear our say on things. So thank you from me to you for coming on. Is there any last words you want to put on here? Like, where can we find you? On YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, wherever?
I mean, thank you for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure to come on here. People could take this whole discussion as a bit of therapy, because I think we've covered all angles. So at least up until now, we'll see what happens later. But again, thank you for having me, bro. And yeah, for those that want to find me, Younes Talks Football here on YouTube, and obviously I'm on Instagram, YounesHH92. Not on Twitter anymore. Decided to leave that cesspit. But apart from that,
good call.
Apart from that, and I'm also on Twitch, Younes Talks on there. So yeah.
Thank you guys for listening, wherever you're listening on YouTube. If you haven't yet hit the like button, be sure to do so. Subscribe if you are new. And also, if you like to watch a little bit on your phone or when you're next to your computer and then you want to go and listen to it, the 3 More Points podcast is available on Spotify and iTunes, and somehow we're like number 1 in sports podcasts in some countries, which I don't know how that's happened considering we've only had 1. But if you could go and leave a rating, leave a comment, review, whatever it is. I don't really know that much, to be honest. I just listen to podcasts. I don't really operate on it too much, but if you can, that would be delightful. The link is in the description on the YouTube video, and if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, then let me know your thoughts on how you enjoyed yourself, or if you didn't, also let me know, and I can think about things in the future. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Come on, you Blues.